I do want it's to address truly hard cases on the topic of the state and compassion. What about caring for truly difficult people? The highly autistic orphan boy who can't survive on his own. Distant kin, they're unlikely to want to take on all the burdens of caring for him. Our choices are a state group home or a private group home. The private group home is better. It's better equipped. It's got staffers likely there because of a passion rather than a paycheck and a pension. Its mission is to care for orphans without kin, whereas the state's mission is a backstop. What about the homeless adult with no identifiable kin? Adult often goes to shelters, rehab centers, but there will be more of them without the state. State puts rules of engagement upon shelters. I know a very good place in Bristol. They help men, typically alcoholic men. But the state says they can't keep these men overnight. So, guy has to, after a day, maybe being productive, at least away from the bottle in this Bristol shelter, he's got to get out. And that night, he's inevitably back on the bottle. We're starting all over again. A private shelter not tethered to the state doesn't have that kind of rule of engagement, ends up making it better for its wards. What about providing expensive medical care? A comatose person on a ventilator costs, $20,000, $30,000 a month. Well, again, we have state charity versus private charity. The state has to provide. The private charity has a mission to provide. If the finances are even close to equal, we're better off with a private organization. And if distributed well, finances, they're always going to be more favorable to the private charities. They have no bureaucracy. They have no pensions. They have fewer restrictive work rules. When we rely on the state, we lose the incentive to fund charities on our own. Larry Elder talks about the situation for Black Americans in the 19-teens and 1920s. They had set up very good mutual aid societies throughout the East Coast. They disappeared in the 1930s. Why? Well, the 1930s coincided with the federal government taking over charities. And has black conditions improved greatly? Not when the down and out had to rely only on the state. The state, bare level support, whereas private can get these people much better conditions. Let me give the best example of not relying on the state. There's one group that takes almost no money from the state for its charity. It's the Mormons. They're a large percentage of the people in Utah, and Utah spends very little on them. Why? They have problems too, but they have a community that instills, first off, a tithe to fund things. Second off, a mindset. This is what we do. Connecticut has very few Mormons. We should have more. But at least we can have the attitude that whatever your affiliation, you can help your group. And when you don't rely on the state, your group gets helped further. You and your group are destined to better success compared to reliance on a bureaucracy that can be cut off at any time, that can have restrictive rules that don't get things done. Back to the homeless shelter. If a state-funded shelter suddenly needs air conditioning in all of its rooms, well, they have to go through a process, a bureaucratic approval. It might take half the summer before that gets approved. Private, they don't have that tethering. Air conditioning suddenly needed. We get it done. That's the attitude. I hope you've come around if you haven't started. If not, I welcome your comments. I want to hear about special situations that you think might be intractable, that might be inevitably a requirement of the state. I will probably resist, but try me, and hopefully I can persuade you that we are better off with a privatized charity, where right now we assume that all has to be covered by the state of Connecticut. Thank you for your responsiveness. I'm Mark Greenstein.